This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 215, How to Sell with Personality, an interview with Barry Saltzman.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers. And today our guest is Barry Saltzman. He's a business and sales consultant and an expert in the process of qualifying and connecting with prospects. But what's fascinating most about Barry is he has a process for understanding how buyers purchase and adjusting the sale in the context of that. Today, I have him over at Fox Build, the makerspace that I work out of, and it's always a lot of fun when you interview someone face-to-face. It's so much cooler than you are with Skype. In this podcast, there's a ton of actionable advice that you can take in order to connect with prospective buyers and build that rapport that you need in order to advance the sale. So, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Barry. You ready to babble?
I am ready to babble. Looking forward to our conversation.
Barry, I just saw you last week, actually. It was at the Aurora Sales Institute, that's Sean Green, Dr. Green's meeting where you get together every couple months and we talk about all things sales, and you were the guest speaker.
Yes, I was. That was a fun morning for me.
It was. What an awesome turnout we had, too. And your topic was, interestingly enough, the impact of personality styles on sales performance.
Yeah, that's a long name title for a very simple concept, which is, do we really understand the personality of the people that we're dealing with, and are we capable of speaking in a language that impacts or resonates to our target market?
I'm assuming you're thinking that the impact is negative for a lot of sellers.
Well, the impact is really positive and negative. If you think about this, take a step back for a second. If I really understand you, Pat, you have triggers. You have triggers that I could speak to that might motivate you in a positive way, and then there might be triggers that I speak to that would motivate you in a negative way. So, being perceptive and aware of what turns you on, so to speak, from a selling perspective can be positive or it can be negative. Goes both ways. So
I'm always of the notion of, and I think a lot of salespeople know this, that you need to kind of like read your audience. You need to read who you're selling to, all right? That's kind of what we're talking about here, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's read it at a deeper level than just, I'm looking at a person's picture on a wall, or I think I know the person likes the Cubs. Do you really understand the depth of the personality of the person that you're trying to sell to?
How can we do that?
Well, there's an easy way and there's a hard way. The easy way.
I'm all about the easy way.
Yeah, yeah. As I am as well. The easy way is if you were to run an assessment on the individual, meaning having them take a full assessment, which would give you all this great data. But obviously, if you're meeting a person in a sales situation, you don't have the luxury of saying, hey, Pat, I want to sell you something really cool for your business, but before I learn how to motivate you to make this decision, I'm going to ask you to run this assessment. It doesn't work that way.
That sounds really manipulative.
Yeah, exactly. The hard way is just pay attention. Pay attention to what they say. Do some research before you meet the person. See if you can understand some things about the individual to know what triggers might make them move forward or triggers that might shut them down.
What I liked about it, the presentation that you gave, you actually had some concrete advice that you could give people, some practical things that they can do to figure out, to assess what the person's like that they're speaking with, and then once they knew that, then take action with that somehow. Won't we walk through some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So from an assessment perspective, what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify if this particular person falls within 5 different personality styles.
5 different personality styles.
There's 5 different personality styles that would be their dominant traits of their personality. So one would be, is this person a controlling person? Is this person an outgoing person? Is this person a very exacting person, or is this person more of a relaxed? And the 5th style is really it's a blend of all 4. We call that adaptive. Adaptive people do not have any individually strong traits, but they seem to fall right in the center line of the 4 different primary traits. So what I try to do is I'll go look at the person's LinkedIn profile. I might look them up on Facebook. I might read some of their Twitter feeds. I'm trying to get a feel for which one of these 4 quadrants do I believe this person falls in? And I could see that by words that they might choose, stories that they tell, adjectives that they describe themselves with. So a specific example would be...
So you said quadrants, and I know this is an audio podcast.
Right.
we can't do... Could you somehow maybe describe what the visual would look like to the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So visualize 4 quadrants. Upper left corner is your controlling quadrant. Lower left is your outgoing quadrant. Upper right is your exacting quadrant. And lower right is your relaxed quadrant. And the adaptive is really someone that just kind of falls right in the middle of all 4. So think of a dot just connecting those 4 different quadrants right in the middle of the box.
Maybe you could define those terms a little bit, just a little bit.
Yeah. So a controlling person would be somebody who's extremely goal-oriented. They wake up every day, they know exactly what they need to do, and all of their actions are going to get them towards their goal. Typically, they're very motivated, they're very driven. You see a lot of controlling people in leadership roles, very strong personality. They wake up, they know what they need to do, and they do whatever it takes to get there. The outgoing personality is what you will typically see in a type A salesperson. Very friendly, they love to socialize. It's all about spending time and being energized by people. You could tell right away with an outgoing person is they spend the first 15, 20 minutes of a meeting just telling you about their weekend and how about those Cubs and what do you think about the NCAA tournament. They're just very outgoing, friendly people, and they generally care about you as a person when you're with them. The exacting people are they're the specialists. These are the people that are experts in something. They could be a CPA, they could be a programmer, they could be an engineer, they could be an architect, but these are people that they look at all of the pieces of the whole as opposed to just looking at the whole by itself. They are very, very detail-oriented. They're very strong at the specifics of a particular solution. And the relaxed people are more of the people that are just very laid back. They're just very, easy can-do attitude. They're in no rush. Strong customer service type skills. So with these 4 different personality traits, I look for information on their LinkedIn or information in their profile website that might make me feel that they're maybe a little bit controlling or they might be a little bit, exacting. If they've got lots of letters behind their name, like PhDs and all that stuff, they're probably exacting. So there's little clues that you could pick up if you pay attention to it.
So let's say we kind of tease this out somehow with them. And I'm assuming there's ways of doing that in person too, right? Like let's say I'm working a conference floor, and people are walking by and I hand them a flyer and I strike up a conversation. What's a quick way I can assess what kind of person somebody is? Yeah,
great question. So when I meet people at a trade show or at a networking event, I'll ask them, so, tell me what you do for your business. What type of role do you have? And if you listen carefully to what they say, if they say, I manage 2,700 people and I've got 52,000, square feet of this and that, that's a little bit different to someone that says, my job is all about, pleasing people and I just care about how people feel. So open-ended questions will sometimes guide you to a particular personality trait.
I got this knowledge now. How do I take action on that?
Yeah, so, and this is from the perspective of trying to sell something.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah. So
this is a sales podcast.
Sales Babble. It's all about sales. Yep.
And the reason we call it Sales Babble is there's a lot of bad advice out there. There's a lot of bad myths about what's good sales and what's bad. And I really want to talk about sales that is authentic and successful and it actually brings people success without being overly pushy and slimy.
Sure. And the role of sales to me, it's all about adding value to the person that you're dealing with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's underscore that. It's about adding value.
Adding value all the time. So if I'm selling to a controlling person, then I'm going to make sure I clearly articulate my solution to them as a way that helps them reach their goals quicker, helps them grow their business faster, helps them move into a stronger position. So a controlling person cares about reaching their goals. They care about accomplishing things. So I'm going to sell to them in a way to articulate value, how it personally helps them reach their goals. If I'm selling to an exacting person, then I'm going to make sure that I'm selling to them in a manner that is. So let me explain to you, Pat. There's 17 steps in this process, right? I'm not gonna ever say that to a controlling person because they don't want to hear about 17 steps. They want to hear about the result. But to an exacting person, it'll be, Pat, let me walk you through the methodology. Let me walk you through our framework. let me walk you through how we're going to go through these sequence of steps and activities to get you to the goal, to get you to the result. Because an exacting person is at some point going to ask me for that. If I'm selling to an outgoing person, it's all about how this is going to make, make you feel, your social status, how it's going to represent you in front of your organization, how it impacts people. So again, quick little tips for each personality style. And then I kind of watch their body language to see if this is resonating or not. Because the other thing that's critical with these tools is not all controlling people, are the same. There are highly controlling people that want to take over and dominate the world, and there's lesser controlling people that are closer to that center line, so to speak. So I got to pay attention to how strong is their traits to see how I counteract them from a sales perspective.
And then we got the relaxed people.
Relaxed people, you've got to make sure you are very calm and you're very relaxed, so to speak, with them. You don't want to push them and force them into making a decision. So of the 4 quadrants, the relaxed quadrant would be absolutely the most difficult to sell to.
Really?
Yeah. Now, the good news is 90% of the people that we're typically selling to are not in that quadrant. Right.
I would think it depends on so some industries may have a larger predominance. Let's say I'm selling to accounting companies. They're probably all in the exacting space, or predominantly of them, right?
Yep, absolutely. You'll see mostly exacting people, and someone within the accounting firm might have a controlling personality, someone that's really focused on the growth and driving the business. So they might be dominant at exacting, and maybe their secondary strength would be controlling.
Yeah, I can totally see that. At your talk, we actually did a little assessment and where we're at on all of these. Interestingly enough, and there was some other person who were the only people that really came up truly. I was actually in that adaptive space myself.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, and there was something that you said in there, which I thought was interesting, was people like me find it hard to make decisions because I've got so much data there, it's hard for me to sift it all through. Something along those lines?
Yeah, no, very well said. That might have been almost exactly what I said. So adaptive people by nature, since they kind of sit in the middle of all of these traits, they don't have any strong dominant trait or counter trait. It's hard for them to make a decision because whoever comes to them last sometimes with an idea is where they tend to lean to. People with stronger traits usually follow their strength of their trait, so they typically make a decision based on that. So adaptive people will sometimes struggle with making a decision because there's too many choices. But the good news on an adaptive person is you're not emotionally attached to anything, so you're able to kind of take a step back and see the big picture as long as you can ultimately make some decision.
In reflecting back on myself, I'm like, yeah, sometimes I am like that, especially for big decisions. We go to a restaurant, I can open up the menu and go, I'll have that. I don't overthink that.
Yep.
But sometimes it's huge decisions. I always tell people it's the engineer in me. I want to look at every angle. I want to make darn sure that everything is covered. And then I want to sleep on it. Yeah. Don't ever make a decision. Yeah, I thought that was extremely interesting.
Yeah, and I think the story that I told on the adaptive person is I had a client a few years ago. It was a large professional services firm. We ran the assessments on the leadership team, and everyone on the team was highly exacting, and one person was very adaptive. It turned out the adaptive person was the main partner of the firm, and everybody there was struggling with decisions being made. So after going through this assessment, it was an eye-opener for the primary partner. He basically said, wow, this makes sense. Now I know why I struggle with decisions. So now that we know that I'm adaptive, what do I do with this? So we created some ground rules in the firm where the partners would come to the head partner and he had 48 hours to have to make a decision. So these things didn't go on forever. So we built some business process, kind of some rules.
Which I love. Yeah. That's what's great about schedules, right? Like we're gonna build a project plan. It's gonna have a set of schedules, and we're gonna ship it.
Right.
We're gonna ship this idea or whatever it is on this date. Yeah.
And if the decision wasn't worth a certain amount of money to the firm, then the people coming to the partner with those decisions were allowed to make it on their own. So we try to create some business process or rules to get people working better together, knowing what our inherent personality traits are.
Probably one of the most important rules Pat has about the podcast is it goes out 3 o'clock Central Time, 3 a.m. Central Time every Tuesday.
Well, that must be your exacting must be getting activated.
And it motivates me to do all kinds of stuff to make sure that thing happens.
Yeah, right. You're working with the goal, and you have the end goal in mind, and you work to accomplish that.
Once in a while, probably 3 times over the last 3-4 years, I've missed that date. But for the most part, it's right on the money. There's something I'd like you to share that I thought was just a ton of fun. Was you have 2 questions that you can ask people to kind of nail down the kind of people they are. Do you remember what those questions are? I had them on my iPad, but I left it at home today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact 2 questions that I might have shared at that event, but I usually like to start with, when I'm meeting someone, is, tell me about your business and tell me how you go about reaching your goals. And I listen very carefully to how they answer that. Again, are they going about it in a very systematic way? Are they going about it in a very controlling way, which is, if I set the goal of 10, then I'm going to hit 10 regardless of anything. If they answer it, it's all about my people, then I sense the outgoing. So I always like to ask them, tell me how you go about reaching your goals.
How do you go about reaching your goals? That was the one question. And then the second one is?
And the second one, or another question that I will frequently ask is, describe to me what role you like to play, on your team.
Yeah.
I got to be the quarterback or the boss, or let somebody else come up with the goals and the plan, and I'll do whatever it takes to reach the goal, or I'll help build the plan. So, those are just a few questions, again, but listen carefully to the words that they use. And again, it might help you see what quadrant they fall in based on their personality. And if you really can't tell, and every answer is kind of in the middle, you might be dealing with an adaptive person.
Interesting. So, what could our listeners do this week to take action on this and actually try to get a better understanding of the personalities of the people that they're selling to?
Yeah, so two things that could be done. One is really the mindfulness, paying attention, listening carefully, asking open-ended questions, checking out their LinkedIn, their social media sites. It typically will give you some clues. And the more formal way is for the person to actually take an assessment. So if someone wanted to take an assessment, there is a free assessment that could be done on a website that gives you placement into a particular quadrant. So if you just want to do a quick free assessment to see where you fall, you could take the assessment on prepprofiles.com, and it'll tell you what quadrant you fall. If you wanted a real deep assessment to understand the relationship between all these traits and counter traits, then you would purchase a more formal assessment.
Prepprofiles.com?
Yeah, prep-profiles.com.
I'll make sure and place that in the show notes. That's a free assessment.
Free assessment. Just scroll down on the web.
Awesome.
Yeah, free is always good.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And they can find you on LinkedIn. You, Barry,
Yep.
if they wanted to contact you, or any place else that you...
But I'm on LinkedIn, and I have on my website, it's www.saltzmaneg.com, and that will provide information on me, and it'll share some of the articles and things that I've written, across the industry, and just give you a little bit more color to my background.
Thank you. This is very, 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 very interesting. I've had some other people on here, talk about DISC and bank and some of those other assessments. I like this because this has been the most practical conversation I think I've had on this topic here at Sales Babble.
Well, I appreciate that. And I've done about 1,200 assessments in the last 2.5 years. And the coolest thing about these assessments is, so I meet somebody for the first time and say it's a new client of mine. I don't really know that client. So I don't have 9 months to figure out, the inner workings of the person's personality. So I run the assessment. And what's really cool is once I get the assessment done, there's 40 different profiles that come out of this particular system. If you fall within one of those 40, I have a little cheat sheet card that tells me the names of all the people that have the same profile as you. So if I know you have the same profile as, say, one of my buddies, Dave or Charlie, I'm going to see that your behavior is going to be somewhat predictable to other people with the same profile. So in my mind, it accelerates relationship building by 9 months. It's really cool.
I kind of see it like, oh, you're another Steve Jobs. Oh, I see you. And then you just intuitively know.
Yeah, and I also know what worked with these other folks that had the same profile. So I draw upon my experience of working with, if I had 20 people with the same exact profile as you, chances are that I probably know certain things that will work really well with you, and I also know what things to avoid with you.
Yeah.
So it's a very powerful, it's a very powerful set of data that you use to your advantage. And the advantage again is not to try to take advantage to sell someone something they don't want. It's how do I add greater value to someone's life and business by understanding these things.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Barry, thank you for visiting us. I forgot to mention we're at the Fox Build Makerspace today, and luckily a saw didn't start up, or a 3D printer didn't go haywire. But thanks for driving over here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was great.
During the interview, Barry actually showed me this page of paper that he has that has all the people that he's kind of known in his life categorized in various permutations of the model that he's built, this 4x4 model. It was an 8x11 sheet of paper, and it probably had 30, 40 different names on there, and there was all the different kinds of people that he's met in his life that identifies with each one of those little categories. And boy, I really appreciated that he had really totally thought this out. I've always been interested in these Carl Jungian archetypes, that you studied in psychology. And I wish I had really spent time, and it's something that I'm really working on today, is to better really understand how people think. Because probably one of the biggest sins that you have is thinking that people think the way that you think, but they don't. Everybody's completely different. So it's almost like a Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors. There's 31 flavors of people out there, and you should get to know them. So to connect with Barry, you can find links to him in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com/215. And in there is that prep profiles assessment that he had. That I took that assessment. Very interesting questions. You won't be surprised. So I highly recommend that you take a gander over there. If you enjoyed this podcast right now, give us a 5-star review. Whatever app that you're running right now, you can go on there and leave a review. Maybe you could write a few things. I would really appreciate that. Share this with your friends and your colleagues. And if you have not subscribed to Sales Babble, you can do that by going to you can either hop onto your app there and make sure that you're constantly downloading the podcast, or if you can get on our email list, you can go to www.salesbabble.com, and there's a place right there where you can sign up. Thanks again for visiting us here on Sales Babble. I really appreciate it. Until next week, take care and have a highly successful and profitable selling day.
Think you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.